The title of the show is California, and each piece has been titled after a particular experience or something that I was very connected to in my growing up in California. If it's coming from Mexico or the United States, you don't have the political aspects involved in it as a child. It's just visual and experience. Completely two perspectives and two cultures that really literally don't have much to do with each other. So because of that duality, I think that I have this sort of inner freedom of just being able to choose whatever I please and giving it great value and thinking that piece of newspaper I found on the street is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, while at the same time the Caravaggio I saw at the museum was one of the most influential things I've ever seen. And this freedom, I really think, comes from the border. It would be kind of the last moment that a tourist could buy a souvenir coming back into the United States. So the typical things are these ceramic sculptures of the traditional Mexican piggy bank, which is this beautifully flowered pig where you would, collect your money, or the Virgin of Guadalupe, this Catholic saint sort of invented to get the indigenous people into Catholicism, and it's very kitschy and gaudy and divine too, this suffering woman. And Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and big gigantic Coca-Cola ceramic bottles, and this is constantly sort of being shoved at you and into your window of the car. And so as a child, just sitting in the back of the car, bored, looking at all these things happening around me, ended up really creating this visual memory that also kind of includes this high value and no value to imagery. So the ceramics are all made in a studio in Mexico, in Guadalajara, and it's a studio that's run by this man, Jose Noesuro. And he has a lot of artists come in, and he basically sort of gives you access to this studio and really takes care of you in this city. And I started working with him about 8 years ago, and I realized that I could leave my house and my son and be in Guadalajara, kind of closed off away from any sort of functional, normal, routine life, and make this work, and very well supported by this institution in this place that has very large kilns, and it's complicated to make the work. It takes many firings. Having that sort of freedom, and that's, for instance, a schedule where I can say I'm going to stay up till 4 in the morning until I finish this. Yeah. It's very different from what I can do at home. So it does all of a sudden create this same experience of having this double life in a way. It's unfortunate that we're very well-trained little animals in this world that just continue to, find what their comfort zone is. So for me to kind of let go, it would just be natural to cross a border and kind of access that freedom I would have as a child in Mexico. And you feel it really deeply because as soon as you cross the border, for instance, the lines of the streets disappear. So there's no rows in Mexico. It's just like your body completely changes. I feel like this is really work made from a Mexican woman that grew up in California. I feel like, California was a part of Mexico not that long ago. I can get by living in my neighborhood just speaking Spanish, and it's not a Mexican neighborhood. I can get every little divine Mexican thing that I love to eat, and once, it's very accessible. And I grew up in the 80s, and there was the Californian culture. There's this part about the surfers, the beach, swimming the Pacific, stoners, like this whole surf culture, that I was very good at swimming the Pacific Ocean. I was never good at surfing, but I grew up sitting there, like flirting with the surfer guys, and so it's like California is in me. This piece says, Leone walked into my bedroom and said, I love sneezing. And then I ask why. He answers, because it's life and death condensed in 1 second. And then he goes, watch. Death, life. So that's what this says. And Leon is my son, and he, is 9 years old, and as many, all children do, say the most beautiful things that you've ever heard or could have never thought of. In childhood, you don't have the critical mind developed, so you're just really connected to the truth. And he's right, That is like a very profound thing to say about a sneeze.